What's going on, everybody? Another episode of Life's About with Larry Mullins. Thank you so much for checking out the show. Do me a favor. If you were listening on Spotify, please click that follow button. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and also take a few seconds and write a review. It really helps me out a lot. If you happen to be watching the video or watching the podcast on the YouTube channel, do me a favor and click the like button and subscribe. I'd appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much again for checking out the show. Today, I chat with a comedian by the name of Mike Pond. He's super hilarious. He's from New Jersey. He's from Ocean City, New Jersey. He currently lives right outside of Philadelphia. He's performed at a few of the bigger comedy clubs in New York, and as well as you may have heard of Soul Joel's Comedy Club and Lounge in Royersford, PA. He performs there regularly, the sick outdoor setup they have. But anyways, this is going to be the longest episode of the podcast to date. But him and I chat about a lot. Comedy, how I kind of want to start to do comedy eventually, writing jokes, performing stage fright. We talk about life and just a lot of stuff in general. It was a great chat. So enough rambling from me. Follow him on Instagram at Mike Pond Comedy. Hope you enjoy this one. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, this week's guest, Mike Pond. Is that your club you told me about?
It's one of them. So I went crazy when I did the comedy club, when because they're like $15. You can buy these like 5x7s or whatever. So literally you can put any backdrop you want, and then you're like, what club is this guy at? Where are you? And it's pretty funny to have, like, in the Philly comedy scene, when people started coming to the mics at my house.
Yeah.
It was like, everyone was like, where is this place? I'm like, I don't know, man. Just come check it out.
That's cool. Did you just find that online? Because I love the colors of that. Yeah.
There's like you just Google like brick backdrops. I have red ones, black ones, white ones. And it's pretty funny because like I have like city landscapes and skylines and stuff.
That's so funny. So is it in your basement? Like what gave you the idea to do that? To have do the open mic thing at your house?
Just when I started doing the comedy, like, did you ever seen the show Crashing on HBO?
I've seen it once.
Yeah. So I saw that show, and that show was like kind of like a part of why, like, starting the comedy, realizing like how fun it is and how exciting it is. Because one of the episodes, the guy Pete Holmes, who's the star of the show, goes to like all these different open mics where people have them everywhere, and they just have backdrops and people. It's kind of neat. So
that's, like I told you, that's one of those things where I have like one of those like weird, like sick fantasies in my head. I'm like, man, that'd be so fun to try. But I'm like, I'm already a certain age. And I'm like, I feel like I'm past that point where, like, if I wanted to attempt that, I'm like a little too old now.
I hear you. But how old are you?
I'm 38.
Bro, I'm 42.
Oh, well, shit. I would say, some people would say, and I've heard, just from the people I've talked to, they're like, the only way to know if you want to do it is to just do it, to just try it. And I'm just like, man, I'm like, back in the day, like, I've always liked like the bigger comics and stuff, but it wasn't until I discovered Tuesdays with Stories that like the entire thing just opened up, and I'm just discovering all these comics I never even heard of. And I'm like, wow, this is so much better than half of the shit that's on Netflix, personally. That's my opinion, though.
No, I mean, I when I saw you did the podcast with Mark Normand, I think you said that to him, and Mark is obviously like, I guess he's like 13 or 14 years into this thing, but he's, you never change who you are. It's like, that's why you kind of like that's why when people do stand-up comedy, like, not everyone, if you have like a great life and everything's fine, like, you're probably not going to be that good at comedy. Like, not to say you have to be torture or anything, but like, I don't know, like, he's the same person still now, even though he's had success and like, he's doing well and stuff. He doesn't see himself like that. So it's hard to.
You'd kind of have to maybe go through some interesting stuff for it to make sense, I guess.
Yeah. This is by the way, this is a broken coffee mug. It says what does it say? do something every day that scares you. My mom got it for me, and it's just fun. I don't know.
I like that. Like one of my things is, you grow by getting out of your comfort zone, or at least that's how I've always felt, whenever I'm like, oh, I'm scared to do something. And then I do it. I'm like, oh, that wasn't that bad. But I feel like that's just kind of like a lesson I learned kind of early on. Like, don't always stay in your comfort zone, because then you'll be content. And then, I get lazy easily. And
Yeah, I forget who that quote was by. That there's that quote that says, most people live lives of quiet desperation. People seem like they're doing all right, but like they're just like in this like desperate. They're not really doing anything that like makes them feel like they're alive and that they're living. So it's like, I have a lot of my friends are like, married with kids and have 2 houses and doing well and all that. And then you think they're doing good. And then they come up to you and they're like, I'm getting a divorce. I hang out in the garage all the time. I love my kids, but they're annoying. And you're like, geez. You're like, I thought you were living the dream. And they're like, you're living the dream. I see what you're doing. You're traveling. You're getting on stage. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
that's funny. Yeah. It's like, how things appear like on the surface, that doesn't always mean they may appear happy, but that doesn't mean, like I was married and divorced. I went through a drug problem. My dad died when I was 21. Like, I've been through all kinds of crazy stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm healthy now though, and I'm just like, I try to like, I'm very transparent. I don't care. Like I'm incredibly detailed with anybody. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not trying to hide how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Or act a certain way because it's,
That's what brings us all together. Like people recognize phony and fake, and like when people talk about something real and some like a shared experience, and that's where the comedy stuff comes in. People, their ears stuck, they go, what was that? I went through something like that. And then they start to just, it doesn't matter how brutal it is, people are like, that's more interesting than me just hearing about somebody's success and that they're happy. It's like,
yeah, like, this happened, so and so graduated from high school, my husband bought me this and that, and it like
and
almost makes me want to be like, ugh.
then they're miserable, and you're like, I thought, oh, all right.
Yeah.
It's crazy because I don't know.
I remember seeing one of Carlin's specials on HBO and being like, "Oh, this is funny." I can't quote any of it. I just remember it was in the 90s, probably like mid 90s. And then like I was always into like the bigger stuff, and then like when Chappelle's show came out, of course, I remember I didn't start watching Seinfeld when it first aired, but I remember watching reruns on TV ever since I was young. I remember watching the final season as it aired on TV. And like, so I've always liked him. And then like, I liked Chappelle's show because it was like a sketch type thing and really just the bigger comics. And then like, I've always kind of listened to it and watched it off and on, and when I was married, I actually looked it up, and they're actually closed for renovation right now. The Funny Bone in Richmond, and that's actually the only comedy club I've been to ever.
Wow.
And it was just low ceilings. It was fun. I was really shit faced. I went there for like a birthday thing, and I don't remember who was performing, but it was fun. And I've always kind of admired it. It's just until recently I'm just discovering, this person, that person, that person. I was like, holy shit, there's so much stuff.
Like how cool is it that like there's this never ending world that you were aware of but you weren't aware of? So that's why it's so neat, because there are still a lot of people in this world that don't even really know the comedians we're talking about or the bits, like, and now, you're so into it, and it's like, man, when you introduce a comedian to somebody or something, it's like life changing. People like, this person's take on that and their joke about that, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy because it's like everybody knows of the super huge people, and then it's like even in terms of even in terms of like Mark and Joe, like they're big like to us, but there are people out there that don't have no idea who they are.
No idea.
Have no
And
idea who they are. Was there a certain moment, like, I don't know, like in your life where you're like, okay, I want to try that? Or is it, you know?
yeah, so I've always loved it so much. My mom had like a great sense of humor, great laugh. Like she would always, you hear your parents or someone you're close to laugh at something and your kid, you're like pipe up because, you always you want to impress like your parents or you want to impress these people that, are sometimes hard to impress. So like you hear her laugh at something, you're like, what was that? What was that? And like I grew up in a single parent home, so like she was like my best friend, love her so. So she introduced me to, like Johnny Carson, Eddie Murphy, all these different stand-up things here and there. So I always like had an interest in it, but like most of us, I'm like, I could never do that. Come on. And then you get into this world where you're like in college and then you get the job and you buy the house and you do all these things and you're just like, all right, that's life. But she always knew I wanted to try it. My mom, she always was like, I would always talk about it and she would be like, why don't you try to do it? I'm like, I couldn't, come on. And then she passed away 4 years ago, November 13th. So just a few days ago was 4 years ago. And like 3 days before she died, November 10th, like one of the last things she said to me, she was like, she wasn't doing well. She was like, I want you to try stand-up comedy. And I was like, oh, whatever, mom. And then it took me like 2.5 years after that to actually finally try it because I was just like, all right. So I took a stand-up comedy class at Helium in Philly. They had this like Sunday morning class at 10 a.m. And my niece was actually staying at my house that night. She was like 10 at the time. And I like signed up and then I was like, hey, I know you're staying at my house, but I'm going to be leaving here in the morning for 3 hours to go to some class. She's like, what? I'm like, I'll be back. And so I walked in that first day to Helium in Philly and I was like, I don't know what to expect. I'm nervous. I don't even like talk. Like I have a phobia of talking in front of people on stage, like on presentations and stuff.
Oh
But
yeah,
like
me too. Exact same way.
yeah, I still have it. The moment I walked in there though, I was just like, I've been in this club millions of times, but never on like a Sunday morning with like 13 other people that were in my class. And we all were like the same thing, like nervous and like, what is this? Why are we doing this? And it just felt like home. It just was like, oh, this is what the hell? This is awesome. And my instructor, a guy named Chip Chantry, he's a comedian. I think he's been a comedian like 10 years. He's awesome. Like he like just like made us feel at home. And we went up on stage for like a minute and he was like, don't worry about being funny. Just talk about yourself. And I still was so nervous, but I felt so alive, even with like 13 people on a Sunday morning, 10 a.m. I didn't know anybody. I'm just like, hey, I'm Mike. And I like told a joke and I got a laugh and I was like, what is this? and then we had like 5 more classes and a graduation show, which was like May 19th or May 15th of 2019. And the graduation show was like one of the most like unbelievable experiences of my life because we just had to do a 5-minute set that we kind of worked on for a couple weeks. And I had like, you're supposed to invite people if you want. I had like 15 friends come.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I think total in the Helium Comedy Club in Philly seats like 250, like pre-COVID. And I think we had like, I don't know, maybe like 100 and a little bit over 100 maybe. But it seemed packed in there. And just the energy in there from your friends that are excited to see you and then all your classmates' friends was just like, it was like you were on this drug that wasn't a drug and you were just like, what the hell is this thing? And I was so nervous though. I almost drove home like 3 times. I was like, I don't want to do, what am I doing? Who am I? Like, and but I stuck it out. And when I got on stage, the first joke I told wasn't even supposed to be in my set, but it hit like really hard. And then my next 2 jokes hit hard. And then my 4th joke, my mind went blank. And for like 15 seconds, I was just like, what are we doing now? And I was like, shit, this is it. It's over. Like, but then I recovered and got the last 2 jokes in and they hit. And it was just like, I was like, I'm hooked. I'm like, here we go. This is amazing. I see why people never stop doing stand-up. Even like comedians, when they get famous and stuff, you're like, I can see why this is your love, Sorry, that was a long
No, dude, it's totally fine. This is also my way of getting to know everybody. And like, so So I bet basically that class, they taught you basically how to be comfortable on stage and talking in front of people, because that's essentially all you'd be doing.
Yeah, it was cool because Chip is hysterical. If you want to check him out, Chip Chantry, it's a Chip like the potato chip, and then Chantry. He's so funny, and he's so like laid back and chill, and like a positive kind of guy in that setting. So yeah, they kind of just like, you go there and you're like, I don't even know how to hold a microphone on. Like I never paid that much attention to how comedians hold mics. So like I have a million mics in my house, but like I was holding it, like choking it like a rapper at first, and then you don't even realize it, and then you look and you're like, oh god, and then you watch other people and you're like, no, you got to hold it down a little bit, you got people to see your face. So then yeah, you get used to talking to people on stage, just having some stage presence a little bit. Timing is important, which I never really understood, like letting a joke breathe, like not just trying to get through it, but like letting it hit the audience and let them react to it. And we only have 5 minutes, so just putting together a 5 minute set that you would see on like a late night if you were 5, 10, 15 years into comedy and you were getting that shot. So I almost wish I could have the class year round, because when it was over I was like sad. I was like,
I mean, I imagine that helped a great deal, because like I know in high school, whenever we'd have to, like you said, make a presentation in front of the class, I was petrified. Like, and I hated doing that. And I'm just like, I've had people like occasionally like tell me I'm funny, but I'm like, I've always been like, man, that I wonder, like, is that a possibility? Like, how do you even, I guess everybody has their own way of doing it, but how do you even like, do you just see something that looks funny, or do you just kind of put a funny spin on something that actually happened to you? Like, I guess it all depends.
well, I mean, I have 10 million. I think I have more thoughts that run through my head than not the average woman, because I feel like women have more thoughts than guys, but like I'm right up there because I was just raised with like two women all the time. So I always have a million thoughts coming in, and funny ones, I forget them. And sometimes there's like you're like, oh, that's so funny. And then sometimes it's about like creating it. Like they recommend, a lot of people recommend like writing every day, even if it's just random, and then some stuff comes out of it. There's kind of different ways to. Some people keep everything in their head. Like, did you see the Comedy Store documentary on Showtime?
No, I haven't watched it yet. I just found out about it like a few days ago.
It's I watched it, and then I put it on in the background of just doing stuff around the house like 15 times because it's so good. Jay Leno was like, Jay Leno, the Tonight Show. I think he was like, but like he's one of the best stand-ups ever, but he just doesn't put his material into the public eye. He just does it local, like at clubs and stuff. He's dyslexic. He doesn't write anything down, so like all of his stuff just stays in his head.
Wow.
Some people write a lot of things down and then go, like a Seinfeld that tries to be perfect with every word, every this, and he has been amazing at it. And then other people just keep it in their head. As far as like, I have like 10,000 joke ideas, and then I have to whittle them down, and then you forget them, and you're like, that was good. What was I thinking? But like, you almost don't want to have too many, because then you can't build the ones you have.
Yeah, like me, I would have to write stuff down. I'd have to. And I imagine just like after a while, after you do it so many times, I guess I kind of related, I guess, to maybe song lyrics. You just memorize it after doing it for after doing it for so long or whatever.
Yeah, the thing I'm still getting used to, because like I said, I'm less than like May, like I said, May 15th, 2019 was the first time doing comedy in front of a crowd, and then I was getting some good like opportunities, for being so new, and I was just making them happen because I don't have a wife or kids or anything or anybody holding me back, so I could just do what I want when I want. And I was really getting some like cool opportunities, and then COVID, and you're like, here we go. So what did we shut down? Like March, it was like March 13th or something.
Yeah, and like middle March. Yeah.
So I had like a show booked at Gotham, just like local new talent shows, Gotham Comedy Club in New York, which is one of my favorite clubs to perform at. And I had a thing booked at Atlantic City through like a friend of a friend who I went to college with. This guy who was on like Howard Stern, and like he worked with like Artie, like all these people. I had all these things going, and I was like ready to go, boom, boom, boom. And then they're like, nope, stay home, you can't do anything. It's hard now. Like it's a little bit hard now because like all these established comedians are getting out there, and it's like there's not enough stages. Like
Yeah.
there's most clubs are shuttered and people are doing shows outside, and you gotta like you can't be going to bump people, like that deserve to be on the stage. But the good thing is, I don't know if you've seen on my like Instagram, there's that club. I think I talked to you about that club, Soul Joel's Comedy Club in Royersford, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It's probably like 40 minutes outside of Philly near King of Prussia. Joel had a comedy club that he opened up last fall, like a year ago, inside. Really cool, awesome place. And he was doing pretty good, but like it was hard for him to get like these big names because it's a 150 seat club. And, he tried to keep his ticket price around $20. He can't pay, a big, name. And the bigger names are doing like, theaters and stuff. Well, COVID hit and he just moved it for the summer. He was like, what can I do? And then in like June, he just moved it all outside and then put sand down. And I don't know if you saw the Big J Okerson when he got
Oh
pulled off.
yeah. Yeah. I was gonna ask you,
I was
like,
there that night. I was in the scrum, man. And it was like, I wasn't performing, but like I like helped Joel and Joey, who's his like right hand. And I just like being there and helping them and being around it. And then he gave me some opportunities to get on stage. Like I got to do a set before Chuck Nice, who's this hysterical comedian you probably might not have heard of. Check him out. I got to freaking do the next set I did was right before Sam Morril, who's like one of my like out of nowhere. Joel's like, "Do you want to open up for Sam?" And you're like, "What?" So, and open up is like a weird term because it's like Sam doesn't know who I am. He's coming from New York.
yeah.
He give a crap about me, not because you just show up and you're like, "Who's going?" All right, let that guy go. So I got to like all of a sudden I'm doing a set before Sam Morril, who like a year and a half ago I'm watching on Conan, like this guy's amazing, and then I'm on the mic for 6, 7, 8 minutes before him. It's like, what the fuck? And then the next one I got to do was before Paul Verzi, who was like one of my favorites too. I met in Nashville, and he kind of helped me. Like that was when I made the decision I wanted to really do stand up when I saw him open for Bill Burr. Yeah, I know I'm rambling a lot, but like these topics are just there's so much that's going on in the last year and a half for me. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, totally. No, I'm gonna have to make it up there. I've only been to Pennsylvania like 2 or 3 times my entire life. But every clip I've seen that you've posted on Instagram, I thought it's hilarious, and I especially love the stuff at Soul Joel specifically. Like it just seems like a really cool setup. And I was gonna ask you, like you were there during the whole Big J thing. What have you seen any other has there been any other crazy shit that's gone down, whether it's that you've seen or that has happened when you've been on stage, whether there or somewhere else? Like, have you like what's like the craziest thing that's happened? I'd say aside from that.
On any stage?
Yeah, just in general, like just something random, goofy,
Well,
funny, crazy. I don't know. I mean, there has to be
well,
some.
I'll give you like surreal. Oh, two surreal moments that happened last, like when I did Gotham, and then I'll think of like something that's kind of crazy. So the first surreal moment was my birthday last year, which was October 9th, 2019, not this year. And I was doing one of these new talent shows at Gotham, and you just go on. Are you familiar with Gotham Comedy Club in New York? Have you heard of it? Seen?
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah, I know what it is. I've literally been to New York once.
Ah, dude. Lord. All right. So listen,
Yeah.
bro, come. And now is weird because everything's shutting down. But once things get going again, man, let me know when you want to go, and I'll hopefully these comedy clubs don't continue all to close. Like Dangerfield's closed, the Creek in the Cave is closing. I think the staples like the Comedy Cellar and the Stand and Gotham are going to be fine, but you don't know. But anyway, I'll freaking bring you up there and zip you around, and you'll be like, wow, like the energy there. You're just going to be like, all right, I think I do want to try this. So anyway, I'm digressing. But so Gotham, I was there on my birthday, and all of a sudden, I had an okay set, but like it was a lot of pressure because that night I had like 20 friends come because it was birthday. It was New York. I have a lot of friends there, and I did okay. But like my friends thought I did awesome. They're like, that was amazing, and you're like, that one bit. You're so critical of everything in like a short set. It was like a 7-minute set. So I'm on stage and I get off, and I left my water bottle on the thing. And as I'm walking off, I'm like, that guy looks like so-and-so. And then all of a sudden I like walk to the back and they go, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes people pop in, no pictures, no video. They're trying out new stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Gaffigan. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know Gaffigan? So I'm like, and my water bottle's on stage behind him. He's trying like 20 minutes new material. I'm like, this is like, what the hell? Like, I don't know. How's am I on stage? And then Jim Gaffigan's one of the most famous comedians on the planet. And now he's on stage. And you're like, this is just wild. So that was a small version. And then of it. And then a week later, I'm standing there ready to go on. And some guy, there's this comedian. He's funny. He had a TV show in the 90s. His name's Jerry Seinfeld. So I'm standing there and Seinfeld comes in with like, he's got like a driver or whatever. He doesn't have like a big entourage, just him and a guy. And he's got a sport coat on and he has like a baseball hat before he goes on stage. And he's like standing right next to me. I'm like, Seinfeld's going up. And I'm like, all right, this is wacky. And I'm like, do I talk to him? He's like,
yeah,
right next to me.
That would have been me. I'd have been like, oh, what do I do?
Well, I just had like adrenaline this. And I talked to him for like less than a minute, but nothing crazy. I'm like, hey man, how's it going? What not small talk. Cause I know he's like annoyed by that, but it was more just like a couple specific things that were very brief and not like me being a big fan. And for like a minute, I'm just like in awe. I'm like, this is a billionaire comedian that had the most famous show of all time. He's right next to me. He's going on stage. We're both going to be on stage at the same time. He doesn't give a crap about me, obviously, and he never, whatever, but I'm going to say what's up to him. And then literally a minute later, I'm annoyed because I'm like, you know what? Jerry's going to do 25 minutes up front. He's going to bump me. I'm 12th in the lineup here. And I'm going to end up, instead of going on at like 11, I'm going to end up going on like at midnight. And I'm like annoyed that, not really, but I'm just like, it was just like in awe. And then all of a sudden he just became another comedian to me that was might mess up my set for that night. But it ended up being like one of my better sets at Gotham. And, Jerry does 20. And when he gets on stage, like people lose their mind. Like when they're not expecting it, they're just like sitting there eating chicken fingers. And they're like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes people pop in, this is a great thing about Gotham. Jerry Seinfeld. And people are like, but after like 5 minutes, they're like, all right, Jerry, that was great. What you got? Like, now what? Are you funny? And he was good, but he did a lot of bits that he's done, years ago, which are funny, but people have heard them. And one of the craziest things, and I don't even believe these people that said this to me, they were like, oh my God, you were so great after the show. And I was like, oh, why was I? Whatever. And they go, we liked you more than Seinfeld. I was like, what? And like, I was like, no, I don't really believe you. But then I'm like, I don't know, maybe they never heard any of the shit I said. So I'm like, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how that could maybe, yeah, he's incredibly hilarious, but if it's something that he's, used repeatedly and then, to where like the crowd can like almost quote it word for word.
Yeah.
Then they might still mentally be like, oh, that's funny, but they won't actually laugh out loud at it. Right.
And a lot of times people are just laughing at the fact that they're 5 feet away from one of the funniest and most successful comedians of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a funny, like not funny, like weird looking, but like he's funny. You just look at Jerry and you just kind of laugh. You're like, it's Seinfeld. So like half these people are laughing probably about something he said on the show, and they're like, he's right there. So he'll be like, what? He'll be like, what else is going on? And it's like his voice. People are like, ah! But if I said what's going on, they'd be like, I don't know, man. Do you have a punchline, or where's your setup? And are you funny?
It's a combination of everything, just the tone of voice and just how he talks. I can totally see that.
He was super, like, you hear things about. He was super like nice and not. He didn't seem phony. Like he was very, very like seemed very. Like I said, I talked to him for less than a minute, but he was cool. He had a good vibe. I was expecting maybe him to be like, oh, get away from me. I'm like, he was cool. I was pleasantly surprised. But they say like it is hard. Like I don't know how familiar you are when like comedians that have these rises to the top like real fast, or they get too big. It's not good for them as a brand, like to be a comedian like that. You know what I mean?
So like just blow up really quick.
Yeah, or get to the top. Like it could even be a 20-year thing, but when you're at the top, it's like there's nowhere to go but down. So like for instance, last night I turned on the Kevin Hart. Did you watch the Kevin Hart special at all?
The
On
new one
Netflix?
in his house?
Yeah.
No, I haven't watched it.
So his last like two specials, I just was like, I didn't laugh at all. I was just like, ugh. And like Kevin Hart's from Philly, and I remember seeing clips of him back in the day because I live outside of Philly, and I would like pee my pants. Like not only the club clips I would see, but his early specials were so like he is hysterical, but he's gotten so big. Like you're looking at his house on this comedy special, and you're just like, I don't know. I would pay to live. I would pay to buy one of your bathrooms. Like I would put a mortgage out, you know. So how funny are you at this point? Like when you wake up and like you got 100 rooms and you're famous, like. So I don't know. He seemed like the special was good, but like I just like tuned it off after 5 minutes. I was like, I'm not even into this. There's no like he tries to be self-deprecating, but you're like, I don't know, Kev. You're in every other movie, and you got like $200 million.
Yeah, it's not believable. You're like talking down to yourself. I don't believe it.
Yeah, I almost feel like, I mean, aesthetically, it looked good. I mean, I can't believe that's even a room in his house. Whatever that like, I thought he was like in his house, and then they're like, oh, he's actually going to be in a studio in Hollywood or something. Mm-hmm. But that's his house, and you're like, all right, man. What's funny about that? A big, like, an amazing room with like people in masks laughing at your jokes, like you're at the, the dinner table.
Yeah, that's why I like the comics that are on like Joe's level, Mark's level, and Sam's level. Like they're big to people who know them, but and they can still like they live like normal lives, they don't live in like big mansions. They don't, they go through normal shit.
Yeah.
Like you said, Kevin Hart's living in this big mansion and, putting a mortgage on the bathroom. Like it's, but one of them.
He is legit like he is legit funny, but like, how can you continue to be funny when you're doing so well? Like so much humor is in like the pain. And then like, I don't know, like same thing. You remember Dane Cook?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Dane Cook was in like the MySpace days, so like he was the first person to engage with fans. Like that's one of the things that I love about Mark Norman besides his comedy. I know, like sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm too much of a super fan. I'm like, does Mark think I'm gonna like?
Me too, man. We'll talk about that.
yeah, like. But he doesn't though, because I've talked to him multiple times in person about it. Like I've been like, hey, so these videos I make, are they too much? He's like, no. I'm like, all right. I'm like, I'm sorry for like always asking you about jokes. He's like, come on, I love jokes. I'm like, I know, but are you annoyed at all? He's like, no, shut up. I'm like, all right. But the one of the reasons I love Mark, what was I saying? Because his engagement with fans. Like most people don't answer fans because they're like, I don't know where this is going. Like there are some crazy people out there, but he answers every single person that messages him. And sometimes it's like a stock line, like, thanks, fatty, or like whatever. But like he is, I don't know. Like I feel like that's why people love him so much, because he's so he's so guilt ridden. I'm a guilty person that he's like, I can't not answer that person. They watch something online of me. I'm not going to make them not like me. And that's probably like when you've messaged him, you've probably been like, Jesus, what am I doing here? And then he gives you a response that's like, this guy's fucking awesome. The connection, like he understands that like 10 years ago, he was the comic and a guy that was trying to like, so he understands that like, it's all about just connecting. And if somebody is thoughtful to you, says something nice, shares something, like he wants to promote his brand, but like he also wants his fans to feel like they're connected to him. And I think there's other comics like that, but I think he's unique. There's something special there's something special about him that
special needs.
That he like, well, yeah, we're all special needs a little bit.
Oh yeah. Right? His personality, like we're similar. Like I'm very like quirky and kind of an introvert.
Me too.
And like I worry about the stupidest stuff. I wouldn't really say OCD, but I could definitely relate to him in some ways. And I only went to New York City once, and it's we took my cousin and I took the mega bus up there, and the weather ended up being shitty, and like we ended up going back early, so we didn't go. And we kind of walked through Times Square, but it was really cloudy and rainy. There weren't a lot of people out, and I was like, oh man, let's just go home because it was cold. The wind was blowing. It was
Yeah.
rainy. I was like, man, I'm like, I want to go back when it's like nice.
Right. And what I hope for you, I don't know how normal this world's going to go back to when, in a year from now. But one of the best things about discovering, like truly discovering comedy and discovering comedy in New York is that it narrows it down. Like New York is an overwhelming place. You're like, should I go sightsee? Should I do? I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. But when you're so into comedy and you go to New York, that's all you care about. You're like, I want to watch a show. If I'm a comedian, I want to try to get on an open mic or get on a bringer show, even though they're weird. Like I want to. That's all. Like, when I go to New York, that's all I care about. I'm not like trying to do anything else but see comedy, do comedy, experience comedy, write. Like I love going to a diner in New York, even with a friend or two that's a comedian, or by myself and just writing and drink coffee and look around. It's so awesome that it narrows it down. And I really hope New York bounces back comedy wise, because there's nothing that can even compare to getting experience in comedy in New York City, because you can get to so many places. And like I've done it in LA and it's hard. You're just driving all over. You're like, this is far, this is here. The people out here are weird. They want to be actors, not comedians. So
Like what I want to do is I want to get to, if it starts to get somewhat back to normal, I'd like to make it up to Pennsylvania, and I definitely want to go to New York and plan like a weekend type deal or something where I go and just have a lot of fun and see what I can go to or whatever.
So I don't know how the restrictions are going to affect what Soul Joel's doing, but like right now everything is outside, but he does have a big heated tent. So I think it still meets guidelines, even though they're changing. Mark is scheduled, I'm not sure the date yet, to be there in December. And if you feel it, I'm telling you, I mean, you'll be outside and it'll be heated if you want to. I mean, obviously that's a cool show to go to, because I think they're alternating every month, like Joe List, then Mark this month, then Joe. So think about it. If you see those dates, it's a pretty cool experience.
Well, I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for it, because I'd love to go to one of those, just because I love even just looking at pictures of them. Like it just looks like a cool setup.
Yeah, it is. And Joel Richardson's the guy that runs the club, and he's always just trying to make the experience better for the fans. Like, it takes a big hit when you open a comedy club and then a couple months later the whole world shuts down and you're like, I got to pay this mortgage, or I got to pay rent here, I got to do this, I got a couple employees. So he's really been able to kind of not capitalize in a bad way, but like everyone wants to do comedy and he's creating the space for them. And if you listen, not just to Mark, but all these comedians, like on my birthday, I was one of the openers for Mike Cannon. You know Mike Cannon?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was talking so good about Soul Joel's on his pod, and like, it really is. It's hard because I'm there. Been there so much. So like, you forget how great it is until you hear people come do the show and then go back to New York, wherever. And they're like, that was freaking great.
Yeah. Like I haven't heard anybody say a bad thing about it.
No, and even the Big J thing, the Big J Okerson thing is like,
when I saw that video first, I was like, what the hell just happened? I had to I was like rewatching it and squinting. Like,
well, did you hear them describe it? Like what happened on, like they described it. Well, Louis J. Gomez described it really good on his own pod before the Legion of Skanks got together to discuss it. And I actually thought
I think that's what I watched, is when he described it.
Yeah, I mean, the Legion of Skanks thing was good, but there's like 9 people sitting there outside the stand. It's hard for when Louis described it. It was just him. It was Zach Amico and Christina Hutchinson, and Christina wasn't there. Zach was, but Zach was like over in the hospitality tent drinking vodka. I don't even think he walked towards the stage when all that happened. So Louis on that pod described it pretty good, but it was freaking wild. And like, it was one of the best things that could happen for Soul Joel, because everyone's like, what's this place? What happened? And it's not dangerous. Like, that was one guy that like was super drunk and weird, and his sister was super drunk and weird, and Big J didn't even freaking go in on her hard. He just was like he was just like guiding her to the obvious of what she was already saying. Mm-hmm. He wasn't like, you suck. He was just like, so wait a second. And Big J, he like sits on the stool and he's just like, he's just taking her down this path. And the guy went up there when we were all focused on getting the girl out of there, kicking her out. because she was like punching her mom. So everyone was kind of doing that. And that's when the guy kind of got to the stage. So it's not like this place where you're like, it's dangerous. It was just that guy like slipped into this thing. And Joel has a lot more security there now that you don't even know are security, like these Marines and stuff. Like
kind of like just kind of undercover. They just look like a regular, just somebody in the audience. You have no idea.
Undercover, like an air marshal, like you, if you looked around and really paid attention, you would know that like this couple of his friends that he grew up with that are like either off-duty police officers, Marines, like guys that know how to diffuse things. Like they're around, especially for bigger shows.
I remember when that stuff happened and I saw it, I was like, what in the world? And I remember hearing Soul Joel's, but that was before I even knew that it was just on sand.
Right.
So I was just like, oh my God, did he just get pulled off onto cement? I was like, holy shit.
And like, it did happen quick. And like, I think just the leverage the guy had with the stool, that's why I made it like Jay was too close to the end of the stage, I think. And it was probably like 4 minutes of wildness, but then once it got cleared and everything, like I said, like it looks wild. You're like, oh my God, I'm not going there. But it's like a suburb of Philly. It's fine. Like it's not dangerous. It's like everyone there is really chill, and the fans there are amazing. And like Joel's great, and all the comedians we were there last week, which was wild. It was pouring, and like the sand was. We were like making moats and trying to get the water off the sand. And then Joe List is coming, and he's bringing freaking Steve Rogers, who's hysterical, and Rahan Hirschberg, who's freaking murder. And then he brings Louis C.K. So you're like, all these huge names are coming down here. We got to get this venue ready. And we did. And if you did you listen to the pod from this week?
The bearded biker gang one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you heard Joe describe it. He's like, I'm driving down with Louis, and this happened, that happened, and it was freaking. The crowd was great, the comics were great. Louis freaking C.K., one of the, like at one time the biggest comedian on the planet, is doing a set there and doing a long one, like 35 minutes. And like he came 2 months ago with Joe, and he was just starting new bits with like 20 minutes. Yeah. Now he's up to like 35. He's taken a bunch out and he's building on ones, and it's so cool to see the comic like not bomb, but like a couple jokes didn't hit the first time, so he just got rid of them, and a couple jokes were and he's built on them. And you're like, this is how you build an act. You keep doing it, pay attention to what works, and then you build it out. And you're seeing Louis C.K. do it, and it was just kind of neat because this last time Joe had Louis end the show, whereas the show in September, Joe ended the show and Louis went up like third, which was cool. So it's all magic, man. It's like hard. I just love it, man. And I think I said to you, I messaged you the other day. I was like, I'm proud of you. And I am, because you just are like, fuck it. I'm going to do this podcast, and I'm going to not worry about, I'm just going to do it because I like doing it. And that's why we should all do shit. Do things because you love them, not because you want an outcome from them.
Then again, with the exception of Chris, everybody I've talked to has been from New York, and they all have just been very just down to earth.
So you're saying that me and Chris Allen aren't down to earth?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, like, who did I talk to about that? I talked to somebody, and like, the ones that are actually living and like based out of the West Coast seem to have kind of an attitude.
Really?
Maybe, I mean, that's my perception. I could be wrong, but like,
no, I think that's right. I think that's
like I live in LA, and and and
yeah, beat it. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm an East Coast guy, but everybody I've talked to has been incredibly chill and down to earth, easy to talk to.
I mean, there's a reason why podcasts aren't as successful that so much as caring that much about other people watching them. It's about like the connection that you could, like, this conversation has been awesome. Like, I could talk to you for 6 hours because it's just, we're talking about a common thing that we both love, and this whole world is like this, and we're just seeing pictures and videos of things. And although this is virtual, we're not checking text and Instagrams and Facebooks and bullshit and YouTubes. We're just talking. And I think that's why people love podcasts, because there's no script. There's no, it's just two people just being real with each other, and that's why Tuesdays with Stories is great. Like I almost can't watch too many pods because there's not enough time in the day, so I just focus on that one
Oh
and
yeah. Like
couple ones here and there.
I have fallen I have recently I've started watching History Hyenas.
I mean, Giannis and frickin' Chris are frickin'.
And I'm like, this is incredibly hilarious. So I'd say that's probably my favorite behind Tuesdays with Stories. Of course.
But and also like, you know, the purpose of your pod, it seems, is to like more just like examine like life is a bit like the stand-up, like how what my experience is, how it connects with what you're doing and your path.
And also when I decided, I'm like, well, okay. And I've been hooked on like watching like the podcasts where comedians are interviewed, but normally the people hosting them are other comedians. So
Right.
I'm like, and I'm sitting there I was trying to come up with the name, and I'm like, I don't even know what I could call it. I don't want it to just be my name. And then like, I just kind of thought of that as like a play on words, like how some people like say, you know, life's a bitch.
Yeah,
It was kind of like a play on words. I'm like, okay, it's not taken, thank God. So
yeah,
but I mean, it's, you know, and I'm like, hey, if, like I said, I don't care how big or how small the comic is. If there's something I can physically watch, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm down.
But that's the thing, like that, you know, when you're doing a comedian that's raised to a certain level, like you feel some guilt about wrapping it up. You know, you're like, all right, I said it'd be 30 minutes, and that's it. And 30 minutes is perfect, especially because you know you take somebody an hour, even if it's an interesting conversation. They have a million things to do. I have work, and I don't have shit to do. Like I came home from work today. Philly is shutting down, kind of. Like I brought a bunch of work stuff home to work from home, kind of now with all this new stuff. I don't got like, you know, I don't have a tiny cupboard set tonight in New York. I don't have 6 podcasts to do. So it's like, you don't have to feel any guilt with me. Like, I got to wrap this up. I mean, you can, like I said, any second, but like, you don't have to feel like ever talking to me that I'm like annoyed because I live, eat, breathe, sleep this comedy podcast nonsense, talking about it, doing it. I just love it. It's like cool to have such a.
It's when I started it, I'm like, okay, I kind of said, I was like 30 to 45 minutes is what I told the comics starting out. And then they always would go over 45 minutes. And then once it got to asking Mark, I was like, this man is busy as fuck. I said 30, 40 minutes tops. That's what I told him.
And I think that's a good rule to keep for most comics, honestly, because, and also for you, like, I mean, you're going to be going through what, 3 hours of footage, which is fine, but like, you also, sometimes you got to just keep it succinct. And I think your pod with Mark was perfect because sometimes these hour pods, you're just like, oh, all right, like, you know,
attention span and stuff.
So where do you live? You're in what town you said?
I live in Woodbridge near Manassas, probably about 40 minutes south of DC.
I lived in, so I moved down there when I graduated from college. I didn't know what I want to do, and I was in a fraternity at the College of New Jersey, which used to be called Trenton State College. And I'm not like a frat guy. Like if I didn't go to a small school where like you kind of have to do something, I wouldn't have been a fraternity guy. So I ended up, like, my buddy got me a job with like Miller Lite, and then I worked on the PJ Tour, and then I moved to Northern Virginia and worked for a marketing company in Old Town, Alexandria. So I lived in first time when I lived in by exit 2, right when you get into Virginia from the Beltway. You know, like, what is that, Franconia, Springfield? So I lived down there for 1 year, and then it was fine, but like I was kind of just like 24, and like I was like, why am I living in, like, this is a weird place. So that's when I moved to Clarendon, found a townhouse with random people, and Clarendon, I mean, was the shit, man.
And I used to work for a while. I worked right across the street from Ballston Common Mall.
Okay, yeah.
Like over in that area. And when you said like Clarendon, I was like, oh wow, you know, small world. But
yeah,
I've only been to, like I said, I've only been to Pennsylvania, I think twice, 2 or 3 times. And at the time, my friend at the time, they've been long divorced, but when he'd started dating his now ex-wife, I drove him up there to meet her because he didn't drive at the time, and ran up the rocky steps, and did all the goofy shit like that. But I just know that I'm like, man, I know, like, Virginia, like, in my experience, sucks in terms of females. Like, every female I've met from like Philly is super fucking cool.
Really?
Like I don't know. At least to me, maybe it's because I live in Virginia, and
Yeah.
everybody here, like 8 out of 10 girls here are just
Yeah.
stuck up. They're freaking
You're talking about the locals, right?
yeah, locals. Yeah,
Yeah. See, I mean, I lived in Arlington, but DC is such a melting pot for people from all over the country or the world, like moving there to work on the Hill or for a company. So I was able more to experience meeting girls like that when I lived down there than the girls that were from Falls Church or from Woodbridge or from, whatever, Chantilly. So yeah, I can see what you're saying. Like the towny kind of ones are like big pains in the asses, where Philly girls are a little rough around the edges, but like there's some hot ones up there that are more real, and it's kind of
yeah.
cooler.
I just I have the most interesting luck with females. Like it's like I don't have a lot of luck with them, but when I get lucky, I get lucky. It's one of those weird situations. Like,
I think it's funny, not fun in a bad way. Like you call them females, like it's like females. Like I like that.
well, I don't know. Like I don't really, sometimes I say chicks,
No, I
sometimes,
like females because it's
I'm
like,
not politically correct at all, but like sometimes it's just how I refer to them.
no, I think it's great. I might start calling them like, yeah, I was on a date the other night with this female. Like it's
Yeah, I don't know why that just came out. I'm really like
no,
yeah.
don't keep doing that. I like the female, man. Chicks, girls, broads, whatever.
Yeah,
Did you ever see the Fighter and the Kid episode when Norman was on with Brennan Schaub and
oh
Brian
yeah.
Brown?
Oh,
When he
I was crying.
when he was going back and forth like dame skirts, whatever, and like, they're just like dying at him. Like, what the hell's wrong with this guy?
And he's like saying like vag gash and all
Yeah,
that
and they're
stuff.
like,
And
Jesus, Mark. He's like, what? They're just words. I'm like, that's what's great. They are just words. Everyone needs to calm the fuck down. They're just words.
yeah, and I had it's weird this when I went up there, so and we don't even talk anymore, me and my friend at the time, but when we went up there one weekend to see his girlfriend, she was actually like, her and I were pretty good friends too, and we were hanging out with her. We went over to her one girlfriend's house who had a boyfriend at the time, but she was really cute. I was like, oh, you can hook me up with a Philly chick. I'm like, this would be nice, I could drive up every weekend or whatever. And we were talking and nothing happened. And then when the two of them got married, I was the best man. And like, we were like, it was heated, man. Like I was sitting next to this chick at the table and we were like kind of holding hands under the table. This is while she had a boyfriend. And I was like, oh my God, this feels weird. But I'm like, I'm like, I want to be exactly. That's the way I look at it. But I was like,
if she's doing it, it's on her, man.
Yeah, it's not me. It's not me.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do? You're a guy with a dick. We can do.
And literally like I have to drive back that night because I drove his mom and his aunt up, and I have to drive them back but I totally would have dropped them off and turned my ass right back around if it were an option. I totally would have.
The power of females, man. The power of women.
And we were literally, I was getting ready to leave, and like that moment, like it's gonna, the kiss is gonna happen. You're standing so close, and then it didn't happen, and then she just kind of stopped herself, and I was like, and then
it was like blue balls, like it was like
yeah, and then it's funny because right when I like the chick I was married to for a few years, right when we were starting dating. Literally, and I'm not even exaggerating, the day we just, I guess, like when you're in a relationship, you make it official. The Philly chick messages me, I'm not with my boyfriend anymore. And I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. And of course, I didn't cheat or anything.
Timing, yeah.
Timing, like that story of my life, man. Like that's the story of my life.
Yeah,
And then I get divorced and she has married somebody else. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's just not going to happen now. Like that's just
she's the one that got away.
Yeah, I guess so. But whatever.
My one that got away. I met her. She's from Arkansas. I met her on spring break back in 2000. I was 22. She was 18. I was like a senior in college and she was a senior in high school. Sounds creepy, but like it's 4 years. And I just like fell like in love with her, and like nothing happened then. But like 2 years later, we somehow started dating long distantly, but that didn't work either. And then she ended up marrying some like rich guy, whatever. And then that marriage failed. I'm like, I'm in. And then she ended up marrying a Green Bay Packer. And I'm like, all right,
Wow.
I'm not in here. Like the guy was like best friends with Aaron Rodgers and everything. And I'm like, all right, that's not it. But the funny thing is she's married to this guy he doesn't play for the Packers anymore. He's like a lineman, but like good looking guy, seems like a nice guy. So they have 2 children together. And I always kid with my sister because I always say like, I'm going to swoop in. So like, I'm friends with her on Facebook. I don't really talk to her, but like I'll see pictures and I'm like, hey, my future stepkid's doing good. So-and-so's in kindergarten. Tommy said his first words. Like I'm updating. I'm like, I'm gonna be such a great stepdad to them in 10 years when they get divorced. And she's just like, Jesus Christ, what's wrong with you? I love her. But I have like a joke that I haven't really tried. It's kind of like whatever, but I'm gonna try to develop that. I'll probably use fake names and a fake team, but like the Green Bay Packers, it connects me to Aaron Rodgers,
Yeah.
basically. And
it's like I just have interesting, like I'm weird. Like I'm the kind of guy, like I like to be with someone. I like that companionship, but at the same time, I like being single.
yeah,
It's weird. It's weird because like it's like I want both things. You can't have both things, but it's like I'm not alone. I have people that love me, my family, but I'm lonely. If that makes sense, I get lonely.
I am lonely a lot before COVID, and that it's important for people to say that because it sounds like it's a character flaw. When people say they're lonely, it sounds like you're like, oh, what the hell? And you're like, it shouldn't be because it isn't. But like you said, like then people annoy you, and you're like, I just want to be by myself. So it's good, obviously always good to have a pet. Pets are like, great. And then like just having friends like this is important. And like that's why comedy was important. I gained so many comedy friends that like that was a companionship that wasn't romantic, but it was like I have this like little bit of group now. And having the open mics and little shows at my house, people coming over, like it fills that void of like where sometimes people get a girlfriend or boyfriend to fill that void and they don't even want that person. They're just like, we watch Netflix together. They pass the time with me, but I don't even like them. They're annoying. So, why even have that person in your life when you can fill it with something that you have passion for? So, like, I have no like interest really in dating at all. It's like crazy. Like, I just love comedy. I love my sister and my niece and my close friends, and that's life.
I have it's after and I was with somebody. My last relationship broke me. Like we were engaged and it fell apart pretty quick once we moved in together.
Yeah.
And it was just, and I'm like, man, if I was like, damn, if we stayed in the dating phase where when we were just dating before I proposed to her and stuff, I would see her like twice a week and she'd actually miss me.
Yeah.
I'd only see her like twice a week. And then it's just, we weren't constantly fighting, but she ended up being a bitch. I'm like, she could have been nicer to me. And I'm just like, and I was probably a little too needy, but I'm needy. So what, whatever. But
that's the thing. Like
she just wasn't the one for me, I guess. It just didn't work out. And I was like, you know what?
I don't know if anybody's really that one for anybody. Like the moving in together thing is like, it's weird. Like people are in your space. Is this, is that? It's like, I don't know, man. I don't know a lot of happy marriages, even the ones that are like seem happy. Like like I said, my friends are like, nah, I hate that. I hate it. I'm like, what? All right. So it's like, unless you really, and I wanted to have kids, but now I don't give a shit. Like unless you want to have a family with kids, like you don't have to do the marriage thing. Like just live your life, enjoy it, and don't worry about it. And I'm content with that, man. Whenever anybody gets in the way of my comedy pursuit, and I don't even have a dream. I don't have like a famous dream. I don't have a dream to like, one day I'm going to be, no, I just love doing it and as much as I can. And if anybody gets in the way, I just actually drop them. And I never used to be like that because I like want people to like me. Obviously I do comedy. So I just drop them now. I go, you're in my way. I don't even say that. I just go, I'm over this. And I've had a lot of people in the comedy community, not a lot of in Philly too, got in my way that I thought were cool, but they got in my way and like had some malicious intent or just were dicks. And I just dropped them completely. And even people that could like help me, I'm like, I don't care. You're just in my way. And I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just like, I don't have time to waste energy on somebody that's not genuine and super cool. Like I want people to be happy and do comedy. I don't want people backstabbing. I'm not a backstabber. So
Yeah,
you
yeah, maybe one day I'm like, I was like, man, it's just because I've just been, like I said, it's like I'll occasionally, like, I like watching, like, I like watching fucked up movies.
yeah.
If I'm not watching something funny, I like I like movies that are like out there, but like I'm just so into comedy now, like watching it and stuff, like, man, and talking to other comics, like it's made me, like, in a weird way, it's like it's made me want to do it. But
Well,
I'm like, this is like the
you
total,
better do it.
huh?
You better do it. Listen, right? I think you're in a good spot right now because you can't really do it, and I think that's good because you can do this. Because if you tried to do both right now, like if the world was normal, you this wouldn't be as good as it's been. If you were trying to do too much, like stand up and get out there, right? I think
Mhm.
what you're doing is great because you're establishing this thing where you're talking to comedians that are big comedians and not just like an interesting comedians. It's not even about being big. And if you were trying to do stand up now, it would be hard for you to do both. Like I think Nate Bargatze.
Yeah.
Do you like his comedy? I mean, he's clean, but you think he's
I
funny?
haven't. I watched. I mean, I was at the Tennessee Kid on Netflix.
Yeah.
I started it. I mean,
He's just a different kind of comedian, but he is hysterical. But
yeah.
he besides his comedy, he's got interesting outlooks on things that are have wisdom behind them. There's actually this interview he did. It's with this guy, I think out in like Portland or something. I think it was last summer. If you just it's very you'll really like it. It's in black and white for some reason they made it, but like it the guy talks to Nate for like 2 hours and Nate goes through all the comedy stuff. And he basically says you have to get good at one thing, and people have said this before, or you're never going to get good at anything. So like if you try to do podcasting, stand up, and Instagram, like try to promote your Instagram and do all these amazing things, you're never going to really get very good at any of them. Like you actually can't. Like you can't get great at it until you get great at one thing, and then you can branch out. So I think this, you're doing
It's
comedy right now.
well, it's like I try, man. I always say, like, if I could come up, like, literally take time and come up with like just some stuff that I think is funny and maybe tell my friends or something, like, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't even think about attempting it until I had something that I feels remotely decent or somebody else told me the same thing. Because
I feel
I have
you on
stage
that.
fright like a motherfucker, and
I
I would have to be a little probably I'd have to,
can I tell you why you don't?
because it could fuck with your memory, right? You could
Well, that
totally.
yes to that, but and I'm saying like so I probably like 25% of the time I'll drink before, not a lot. I'll just have one or two something. And I think one or two is okay, whatever. But if you get to a point where you're like a little more, it can it can mess you up a little bit. So I I
I'm
have,
speaking, sorry to cut you off. I'm speaking in terms of like I get like just a very light buzz and I'm like, okay, I can talk to that chick now.
of course,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can talk to that female now.
But one of the main things that I've discovered and other people have told me, that overwhelming nervousness and all that, like that's actually the electricity for you. You don't think it is because you're like, I'm so nervous, I need something to chill it out. But the dulling of something with something that slows your mind down sometimes, it,
So you're saying you just got to get up there and experience it. That'll fuel you. The fact that you're like so nervous, you're just like, oh, I'm
I
just gonna roll with it. And
I am nervous every single time, and my nerves are not like, it'll be fine. I do a great job of not great job. I do a good okay job of faking it because my friends who have come and seen me or other people I don't really know have talked about like, you were so confident up there. I'm like, I was shitting myself. I have a phobia. I have a phobia that I don't think will ever go away of public speaking, and not just public speaking. I have a phobia of being judged by others, but being judged by strangers.
oh, me
So
too, me too.
half of the reason I do this is to conquer the fear. Every time I get on stage, I'm conquering the fear, my major phobia of public speaking and my fear of being judged by others. So when I do it, even if it's not the best set, I've conquered that fear for the day. And there's nothing better than that. I mean, if you bomb, then that sucks. But like, if you have a pretty good set, you're like, you do feel like a proud of the fact that you did it. So that's half the reason why I do it. The promise I made to my mom before she died, because she knew I wanted to do it, and conquering that fear. I am scared to death every time. But the nerves thing, they say if you go up there and you're not nervous,
Something's wrong.
Well, something's not wrong, but you're not going to be good. Like all most good life-changing comedy, whatever, comes from this nervous, wild energy inside you. Like, did you see the Chappelle monologue on SNL?
Yeah.
I mean, some people criticize it, whatever, this, that, and the other. But like, there was some great stuff in there. I think, regardless, even if he takes the different paths that people get, like Joe had a problem with a lot of it, and I get that. But like he said, he went and you could tell he goes, "I'm nervous," and like some of those nerves on SNL, like took him down some interesting avenues. Maybe some of them were preachy, maybe some of them weren't necessarily jokes and funny, and maybe he was a hypocrite a little bit in some things. But he's Chappelle, like he's something else. He's something different. He's one of the goats. So the nerves, if you go up and you're not nervous, you're not gonna make. It's not gonna be great. There's not at least in my experience.
Everybody's gonna bomb at some point, and I understand that. And it's like that. I probably say is, aside from just going in front of people, that would be my probably number one fear. Like, I'm gonna say something that I came up with, and then I'm just gonna hear crickets.
Of course, but I had a joke that I did the first time, and it murdered. And it murdered so much that when I got to the setup for the next joke, people were still laughing about that one, but I needed to get to the next one. So I, like, in the middle of my joke, I had to like point at them and just laugh. And I'm like, whatever. And I'm like, this is amazing. I'm the king, not the king, but you're like, I'm on top of the world. And then I've done that joke again multiple times, and sometimes it's gotten nothing. And like,
it just depends on the crowd, right?
I don't know. Yes, and also maybe the energy of me giving it for the first time, that that nervous energy came to people, because maybe now, like, I don't know, like, I struggle a little bit with the set thing and repeating the jokes and knowing your jokes, because I'm not good at selling something I'm not excited about because it's old. But you can't really do comedy that way. Like, you lose your mind if you're trying to be pretty new every single time you're out there. That's not the way. But I'm just not good at telling jokes I've told 20 times, and maybe I'm not cut out for comedy in the long run because of that. But when there's something new and you try it and it hits, it's like a comedy orgasm. You're like, oh, what the fuck?
I just think it would be fun to like attempt it and just like do it just because it would be fun. And if I can make a little money doing it, cool. If not, okay too. But just to be able to do it would be amazing.
Well, I think like what the podcast right now, like, you're not making any money off of this, but like you're doing it and you're doing a great job. So when shit opens back up, man, if you're feeling it, tell me, and I'll like try to find even in Virginia, like I have a bunch of friends on there, and there's always opportunities once this all gets back to normal, and just go get like, honestly, like, don't overwhelm yourself. Get 3 or 4 jokes. So basically, like, 4 to 5 jokes is a 5-minute set, which seems like that's not a lot of jokes, but you need to let them breathe and you need to not rush them. I have a problem because I have so many jokes that I try to fit too many in, and it's made certain sets suffer that friends and stuff notice. They're like, you had so many jokes. I'm like, I know, because I want to get them all out. And I only had a 7-8 minute set. So the nights when I just done small, like less joke, and like been a person up there and let the audience react to me just being up there, were a million times better. But I don't think joke-wise it'll be as overwhelming as the nerves would be. But I think you'll realize I'm just telling 4 jokes, and then we'll see what happens.
Well, we'll see. We'll see when the time comes. But I'm always like, oh, maybe I could try to write something. We shall see. But I'd definitely like to try it, because I've just become such a big fan of the stuff. I'm like, damn, it'd be awesome to do it, to actually do it.
And it doesn't have to be like, I need to give my perspective and who am I as a person. And it doesn't, dude, you can tell a version of a street joke, dad joke. I'm not saying you lift anything off the internet, but I'm like, the structure of it, you just try, you go, all right, well, that's kind of my life. I'm not plagiarizing, but that's that setup. Because then you just you start to understand the structure of, like, jokes are surprises. That's what they are. They're a surprise that gets a reaction from people. That's why you're waiting. You're like, is something coming? And then it comes, and you're like, boom. I think they say like 10 years in is when you find your comedy voice, which is crazy. Like, isn't that wild? Like, because if you have good sets, you're like, I'm amazing, I'm on top of the world, I can do anything. And then you're like, comics that have been doing 10 years, 15, 20 years are like, sorry, buddy, I was in your shoes too, but like, you're really not going to understand who you are up there for quite a few years. So just be patient and enjoy it.
Thanks again for doing this. It was.
Oh yeah, man, if you ever want to do it again, just to chat, even it doesn't even have to be whatever. But sometimes it's good to get the words out. Proud of what you're doing, and I think you're doing great. And enjoy it. Just keep it up, man. You know, like you got. I mean, think about it. You had your favorite freaking new comedian on a podcast, and this was just an idea for you 2 months ago. Talk to you soon, man.
Please follow the podcast on all social media at Life's a Bit Pod. If you're listening, please rate and write a review. If you're watching, please like, comment, and subscribe. New episodes every Friday. And remember, it's okay to laugh.